What's up, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about how to make comics, more specifically, how I went from this to this. Let's get into it. Okay, step one is the writing. Of course, you need a good story, you need some type of story in order to tell your comic book story and draw it all out. First, you need the words. What I do is, you see, it kind of might be a little blurry, but I kind of plot out each page. Each one of these is a panel on a page, and I have the beats of what's going on in the story. And then I don't have it here, but usually I only keep it on this side of the page, because on the other side there, I'll put in a little bit of thumbnail of what I want the characters to be doing, if they're flying, if they're fighting, if they're talking, and just a rough idea in my head so I know kind of the direction I'm going. But yeah, that's kind of how I do it there. It's mostly just the structure, not a whole lot of dialogue in this part. I save the dialogue for when I start thumbnailing over here and figuring out what the characters are going to say. But from this, I usually take a picture of this and then I go into the iPad. So let's get into the iPad. Step two, draw the comic book page. Now, for this, I'm using a template that I got from DJ Kaufman, who runs the Draw or Die blog and video YouTube channel. So you can use that. I'll put a link to that down below. I've also used different templates for a comic book drawing, and I have actually a whole video on making panels in Procreate for your comic books, and I have a couple of links in that video. So I'll pop that video on the screen real quick right here, and definitely check that out when you get a chance. Otherwise, what I'll show you here is, whoops, let's go back here. I will show you the specs of pretty much everything that's going on with this canvas size. Let's see, canvas information. And what you will see here is these are the specs right here. The width 3300 pixels by height 5100 pixels, basically 11 by 17, because that's what a lot of traditional comic book artists use when they're drawing traditionally. The board itself is 11 by 17 inches, and then I believe the actual comic book area that they're drawing is about 10 by 15 inches. And I use 300 DPI. Usually that's pretty good enough for whatever you're going to be doing. A lot of people go up to 400, some people go up to 600. I kind of think that's a little bit of overkill unless you're working on something ginormous. But yeah, 300 should work fine. All right, so we'll get out of that. Yeah, so this is the template I usually use. I'm probably going to be switching over on my next book to something else, just because on this template, I still have to go down to size and reconfigure it to fit the template of what is going to be printed at. And we'll get into that in a few steps in just a minute. But yeah, so anyways, for now, this is what I've been using. And like I said, what I start with is the thumbnail. So we got thumbnail here. These are a little bit more cleaner than my thumbnails. I've already scribbled out. I probably go maybe about at least two, three, four, sometimes four different thumbnails to figure out how I want the characters acting, what I want them doing, their positioning. It's really, you're acting like a director in a film when you're drawing out your thumbnails for your comic book. You really want to have the angles, the way they're facing. You want them also to be facing, camera side, the way the reader is, unless specifically you want them facing away from the reader and showing their backs to them. But it filmmaking on that respect is a lot like laying out the thumbnails and how you want your characters acting. So anyways, you can see here I have these are more cleaner thumbnails here. And what I've also done is input the speech bubbles. This is really important, and this is a lot of times a step that some artists forget. You want to actually make sure you have room for their speech bubbles, because if right here, for instance, if I had this panel and I made this panel take up the whole area, you wouldn't have any room for the speech bubble. And then this is where he's talking to Ultra Dude. If I made it the whole thing, let's just do that real quick, just like that, and I resize it up to fill up the whole panel on that page, where's the speech bubble going to go? It's going to have to be fit in there somewhere, and most of the time it's going to be covering up your art. And sometimes that's okay, sometimes that needs to happen, but if you have something particularly important on that page that you need the reader to know about, or you just don't want to cover up the nice stuff you've drawn, you want to make sure you leave room for the speech bubbles. Okay, get rid of that, go back there. All right, so that's how it goes. And then I rough out the whole page, make sure I have room for the speech bubbles, and that's there. Next up, I go with the lines, the inks. Let's drop the opacity down on that one. And so now you can see, let's just take it off. I've got all of this stuff here, and this is what I'm doing. Yeah, what I've done in the background here also, so I'll show you real quick. Let's see here. I've used some buildings from another page I worked on, and I just used it and I copied it over. Big time saver there. Some people call that cheating. I call that working smarter, not harder. Yeah, so you can use different backgrounds a lot of times if you're in the same situation. If you have the same background for a coffee shop, why are you going to draw the same cappuccino cup on a shelf in the background a dozen times when you can just copy it over? It's not going to really affect the story. The only part that's affecting the story is letting the reader know the situation and the destination and the location. So maybe destination and location are the same thing. But anyways, yeah, my point is, if you can use little tricks like that to make your process a little bit easier. Let's get rid of that. So yeah, here I got my stuff here, my line art, my inks, and I've also made my panel borders. So I cut off the panel borders with using black ink and white ink to make sure it's all spaced out just like that. And if you don't know how to make panel borders in Procreate, I got another video for you. It's making panels in Procreate. Pop that up on the screen right here. Put a link for it down in the description down below. But yeah, it's super easy. All you do is set up your guidelines so you can make those straight lines. You don't have to worry about holding your Apple Pencil down and making sure you have it straight across or they line up evenly. It's really easy. So just go ahead and check that video out when you get a chance. But yeah, so now there we go. We got the line art, we got the panel borders, and the next thing I go into is the colors. You want to make sure your colors are below your inks, because if you put your colors above your inks, do this real quick. Obviously, that's not what you want. Bring that back down. Keep your colors below your inks. I have a second set of colors, so I usually color my characters and anything important in the foreground on one layer, and then I color anything in the background on the second layer. Just kind of makes it easier for myself. Some people do, some people don't. Do whatever works for you. All right, so I got my colors. I got everything in there. Next, I want to do some little bit more details on the background just to, add a little bit of atmosphere. So I put in some window reflections, just like that. And then after that, we got shadows and highlights. Coloring specifically is not really one of my strong suits, so I just try to do the best I can. Same thing with adding shadows and adding highlights. I do the shadows here, and what I've done in shadows, I use kind of like a deep purple color right about there. And on my shadows, I'll just use the whole thing just like that. And you see it's really dark, but then I'll drop the opacity down to about 40 or 30. I think I keep it at 40. Yeah. So it gives it a nice shadowy look, but it doesn't make it too prominent on there. Next, I add the highlights. Same thing with the highlights. With the highlights, I've tried other colors, but generally I just use white at full opacity, color in where I think the highlights are going to be, and then I drop the opacity on the highlights down to 70. And that is how you make a comic book page in Procreate. Well, at least that's how I make a comic book page in Procreate. Maybe you do it a little bit differently. If you don't know how to do it, maybe these tips will help. But we're not finished yet. We still got to add lettering, right? So let's do that. And for that, you can do it in Procreate. I have a video. Pop it up on the screen right there. I have a video on how to do lettering in Procreate. But lettering in Procreate does take a little bit more time. So what I've done is I export this page to Dropbox. You can if you're using Apple computer and your iPad, you can AirDrop it, save it to OneDrive, whatever you're using. But I export it as a Photoshop file, a PSD, and then I upload it to Clip Studio Art or Clip Studio Paint. In that program, I really like using their lettering because even though it doesn't have as much functionality as say Adobe Illustrator, it really makes it super easy to make the speech bubbles. And that's what we're going to get into now. So let's check that out. Okay, the next step is importing your page into Clip Studio Paint. If you don't use Clip Studio Paint, you can import it into Photoshop or any other art program that you might be using. Also, like I said, you can still just do all this lettering right in Procreate. But this is how I do it. So what I've done is I've saved my PSD file to Dropbox. I've uploaded it up to CSP now. And what I also have is the layout or the template that I'm using for when I get the book printed. So what I'll do first is, I've already done this, but I'm going over it again here for this tutorial. When you upload it to CSP, I don't know why this little green layer shows up, but I delete that. I change and I get my little layer. I know this is it. It's the thumbnail layer, which has my letters on it. So I bring that all the way up to the top. Just double check it. Make sure it's not hidden anymore. Turn up the opacity so I know what it is. Then below that, I'll highlight that one. I'll highlight all the other layers. I'll put those all in one folder, so it makes it easier there. I'll duplicate that folder there. Boom. And then on that folder, I merge it, so it's just one flat layer. So I still have all my other files if I need to correct anything, but I hide those, and now I just have one flat file and the letters. So basically, what I'll do then is I'll take this layer and my rough layer and my finished layer of inks, colors, all the finished art. I'll copy those. I'll go over to my template page here, and what I'll do is I will paste into shown position. Now they're going to be bigger because obviously you've drawn them bigger, and the template that you have there is going to be for the printer. So what I'll do is go up to the little scale rotate box here. Make sure, whoops, okay, cancel that. Make sure both layers are highlighted, the roughs and my finished art. Now go back to the scale rotate box, and what I can do is just scale it down so it meets the guidelines on the page. And then you can zoom in so you see what you're doing. The light blue line around the edge is what I'm trying to go for. So I'm trying to make this a little bit bigger here. Just it only takes a few seconds. It seems tedious, but you really want to do this to make sure your page, your finished art, all fits into what you're doing, as far as making sure none of the artwork gets cut off when the printer prints the book. So that looks pretty good. You can use the little arrow keys on your keyboard to make sure if you want minor adjustments, but all that looks pretty good. Hit OK. So now I have it on the page. I can hide the templates with the lines from where the printer is. And then from this part, I go in and I start lettering the comic here in Clip Studio Paint. That's why I was saying on my next book, I might use Clip Studio Paint for the whole thing, just so I can get rid of this little, it's like I was just showing you right now. It doesn't take very long, but it's nice to just do everything all in the same program. Artwork and lettering, you don't have to switch it over. You don't have to save one copy and change it to another format for Clip Studio Paint. So I think I might do that with my next book. But anyways, yeah, so all you would do now is create the letters. I'm not going to do that on this page. I'm going to delete this, get rid of this, and what I'm going to show you is, see, here is my finished letters. And the reason I really like doing letters in Clip Studio Paint as opposed to Procreate is because, like I said, it makes it super easy. You just click, drag to make your speech bubbles. And also, I really like these aren't super oval like you get in Procreate. These ones have a little bit more squarish rectangle shape to them than you would get in Procreate. That's something I hope they update in the new version of Procreate. And if they do, hey, maybe I'll just draw all the comics and letter them in Procreate. They really need to update or upgrade their lettering tools for Procreate. Like I said, I have that video, and you can use Procreate to letter your comics, but it's not as robust as Clip Studio Paint, or definitely not as robust as Illustrator. But you know, Clip Studio Paint is what we're talking about, and I really like that. So I have this all lettered, but what I'll just show you right here. This is how I would do it. So I've did this. You go to the type, we'll do your little type it in. You have all your little options right here off to the left side of the screen too. So you can change the font, you can change the size of it, you can make it bold, italicized, underlined, all that stuff. You can justify it, you can make it right or left, all that good stuff. So you do that, click OK, and then we go to the speech balloons. Yes, makes it super easy. You can do squares, you can do curves, you can do rounds. I always stick with rounds. Unless I'm doing a caption, I do use the square rectangle one when I'm doing a caption like 1 week later or something like that. So on rounded, you have all your options here. you have the outline color and the fill color. You can change those if you want. And what I'll just do, and then, oh, the other thing is you brush size. So you keep it at a 6, keep the line fairly middle ground, not too thin, not too thick, but you can change that too. So go circle right there. I'm going to do it like this for now. And see, you can go back up here to the operation tool, click on the text, and just move it wherever you want in that bubble. If you want it really small, if you want it really big, you can upgrade the lettering just like that. Say if someone's shouting or something like that, makes it super easy. Okay, go back to the balloon tool. Now you have your balloon tail. And this a really nice thing about Clip Studio Paint when you're doing letterings is you don't have to worry about erasing any part of the initial balloon you made when you put down the tail. When I show you my lettering video on Procreate that I've already showed you, you have to manually erase part of the balloon to make sure the tail and the balloon fit together as one cohesive unit. In Procreate, you don't. You just click and double click there, and you got it. Now, if you want to put a little curve into it, you can do that too. Click once, and then you always double click when you want it to end. And boom, you are done. Just like that. After you've lettered the whole page, you got that. Very nice, right? So now we got a whole page of finished art, of the art lettered, and it's at the right size to send to the printer. So what's next? I'll show you that right now. Next is what you do. You want to save your original, obviously, but you also want to save, this is what I do at least, I save it as a duplicate. I save it as a TIFF file because those are the files I'm going to be sending over to the printer. Here are all the TIFF files for the second issue of Red Bee that I'm working on right now. And you have all of those just like that, right? So you save whether your comic is 10 pages, 20 pages, 100 pages, whatever it is, you save those all as TIFF files because those are all set, ready to go. So here is the file folder for issue 1. I have all the Clip Studio Art, Clip Studio Paint files there. I have the PSD files here. And then I have this for the issue 1, I saved it as JPEGs. Either TIFFs or JPEGs work, I think. Definitely refer to the printer you're using. They usually have a preference. Now that I'm looking at this, maybe I have to save my TIFF files as JPEGs. Anyways, I have all of these. And then what you would do, as in my case, for my printer, they asked you to submit a folder with all your files to Dropbox. So what I did is you want to zip that because you don't want to have a huge file, like a huge folder. But you just right-click it. And I'm working on Windows right now. I'm sure there's a simple way. I have a laptop Mac, but I haven't done this in a while on that. But I'm sure there's a simple way of converting a folder to a zip folder. But for this one, you just go into here, and where is it here? You go to send to compress zip folder, and what that will do is it will make a zip folder for all those files that you've just selected there. You upload that to Dropbox. In my case, I have uploaded it to Dropbox, and then my printer asks for the link for that particular folder. I send them the link, and they take care of it. After your printer gets your files, you can usually ask for a proof copy. That's what I've done. They send you the proof copy, however long it takes them. That all depends on your printer. And then they send you the proof copy. You go over it. You give them the okay. You see anything you want to change. In my case, I was kind of going by a little pseudonym. And I had the pseudonym down at the bottom here, and I was like, nah, just forget it. I'm just going to put my real name, Ron Tucker, and I just changed the file on the cover and on the inside and sent it back to them. Easy peasy. They changed it all over really quick, and then they sent it. For my printer, I think it took me about 3 weeks to get my finished copies, and then there we go. We got the issue number 1 of Amazing Red Bee. The artwork came out great, and yeah, so I was really pleased with it, how it all looks, and yeah. Right now, working on the Amazing Red Bee number 2. Oh, sorry for anyone with, I bent the comic backwards, but that's okay. Comics are meant to be read. Yes, I'm working on the Amazing Red Bee issue number 2, going up right now. But yeah, so hope you enjoyed that. That is how I make my comics, all the way from Procreate to Clip Studio Paint and printed in my hand. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like, please hit that subscribe, and keep an eye out because I will be keeping up with these kind of tutorials and how to make comics, and I'm actually working on a little bit of a workshop type thing too. Also, in the links down below, in the description, I have a new Substack. Make Comics with Ron Tucker. So I'm going to be going over all kinds of stuff on making comics there, and I'm going to be uploading free coloring pages because I make all ages comics. So we all love all age comics, but you know who else does? Kids. So if you want a free coloring page for any kids in your life, grandkids, nieces, nephews, any of the classrooms you might be teaching, or if you're a librarian, check it out. Make Comics with Ron Tucker. Links down below. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.